Hi, everyone. Welcome to Supernal Modern Day Shamanism interview with Raym Richards, who is the creator of Crystal Dreaming TM, an extraordinary modality that I've had the pleasure of being involved with for many years. So I'd like to introduce you to Raym. Hi, Raym.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So it's an interesting profession that you have. Or vocation.
Full-time shaman.
So could you tell our viewers how it is that you came to the pathway that you have in life?
Okay, about 25 years ago, I picked up a rare crystal blue, although my partner had been praying for such an awakening. Prior to that, I was, I can use the term now, asleep at the wheel. I was happy in my life. I was fulfilled in my life. I wasn't in a healing crisis. In fact, I'd kind of reached a plateau of achievement where I had achieved many, many things I set out to achieve as a young man. And in that still place, and I can use these terms now because I understand them, but in that still place, there was an opportunity for my higher self to talk to me because I was open to it, even though I didn't realize I was open to it. So that awakening led me to an immediate understanding of my infinite consciousness and my multidimensionality. And that awakening lasted quite a period of time where I was wide open to perceiving many realities and beings in them simultaneously. And as it settled down, people were coming to me, people I didn't know were coming to me asking for the same experience. And so the modality evolved spontaneously and pretty quickly around me. The challenge for me was I didn't have a physical teacher, and that also is a blessing in some ways in terms of my personality. But it was challenging in so much as I didn't really understand the realities and the paradigm I was opening to. But because people were so keen for me to open them to those realities, then I learned very quickly on the job training. So within a year, I was teaching people how to be crystal dreaming practitioners because people were very, very keen to learn how.
That's fabulous. So when that awakening occurred, can you just describe how that was or what that looked like for you? The reason I'm asking that is because perhaps there's other people out there that may have had an experience or be tapping into something like that in themselves and may not understand what's going on for them.
Okay, so what happened for me was a crystal, Mount St. Helen obsidian, which is actually volcanic glass, triggered a physical sensation in me which I'd never experienced before. So my body started to vibrate. I started to sweat profusely. And when I moved the crystal up and down in front of me, I noticed that my body responded in different ways when I did that. And there was one particular position when I held the crystal where the crystal seemed to emanate light. And, I was game enough, naive enough to go, okay, let's see what happens. And as I looked into the crystal, a tunnel of light opened and I took a big breath and went into it and popped out the other end and was greeted with waves of unconditional love, cheering, clapping, little party. Hey. So it was such a profound experience. It was undeniable. And then as I looked around the room, I looked towards my partner and my longtime partner, my wife and life partner. And of course, she was smiling at me because she understood, I think, what was happening straight away. And I noticed a soft pink light emanating from the center of her chest to mine. And really felt the power of her love and support in what was happening. The other people around were kind of a bit intrigued because by that time I was crying and trying to describe what was happening. So thanks to the support of my wife and young daughter at that time, I was able to integrate the experience and understand it. It would have been a challenge if I didn't have the family support, I think. Or I would have moved into denial. I would have just gone, don't, this can't be happening, which of course we can do. We have free will. You know, I could have gone, this is, I don't know what's going on, but it's not real. But it was too intense for me. I mean, in my unaware state, I was aware that it would have been foolish to ignore the profound nature of my experience. And so, yeah, that led to further initiations, which was kind of like being thrown in at the deep end. But of course, the slowly dawning realization was the truth of our multidimensionality, but also the truth of my previous past life experience in this realm, which I may have been in denial of in some ways, yet it was expressed in my artwork, because prior to that I was a performance artist over a 25-year period. And when I look at that work, well, I think if anyone looks at that work, they can see there's a shamanic element to it, even though I wouldn't have used those terms. The director of the National Gallery used those terms to describe my work. And I was like, well, you know, I just make the stuff. I don't analyze it, I don't criticize it, I just make it. So that I was a conduit, if you like, for my higher self, for my past life experience in this present reality, if that makes sense.
It does, and what a beautiful expression of it.
Thank you.
So you speak to past lives and past life mastery. So you are one of the people who have experienced what I would understand to be a self-initiation. I'm aware also that people can be led through that initiation, through the relationship with a teacher. You mentioned you didn't have physical world teachers who stepped you through that. So what then is the difference, or how does that differ between the two? Where is there a difference between someone who's had that self-initiation and someone who's been stepped through that?
I think they're both going towards the same goal. I mean, I think a physical teacher, a genuine physical teacher, is looking to empower their students, to the point where they no longer need the teacher. Yeah. So in which case, whilst I haven't had a connection with a physical teacher, I can see that they're one, maybe gentler, as in with a physical teacher, and easier to assimilate and easier to understand. For the self-initiated shaman, it's a shock to the system, and even someone with a little bit of prior knowledge, it would be overwhelming. So the teacher option is the gentler option for sure, I would think, in most cases. And from what my perception of meeting people who've worked with teachers who genuinely love them unconditionally, it's about the student's self-empowerment, self-realization, and putting the student on their own path, which of course is unique to them, and giving the student the tools they need to be safe on that path, which is what I do my best to do with my students, as in not to retain any control over the students, to give the students a solid framework where they can step forward and help other people. So, yeah, I guess I speak as a teacher as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So it's an interesting word, the word shaman and shamanism. So what for you is the defining qualities of that?
Well, I guess you could say a shaman in either in ancient culture or modern culture is a bridge between worlds. For me, the modern shaman is a different manifestation of that bridge. Well, it is in my experience. Can you just say that question again, because there was something else on my mind. What was the...
So what is the defining qualities that make a shaman?
Okay, well, I think it's the ability to make a connection with otherworldly realities. Now, that connection might be personal, or it might be a facilitation of a connection for other people. I think either or both are valid. For me, the more powerful is to enable that pure, undiluted connection for individuals, ensuring they're in a safe space surrounded by unconditional love. And I'd also say that a shaman's path is usually a solitary path. It's not really a club or a cult or a religion or a group thing. A shaman's path is one of, I think historically and even in contemporary terms, I don't surround myself with people. I don't surround myself with students. I don't have an ashram, and I don't have people working around me all the time, because it does not suit my personality, and it doesn't suit what I do, and it doesn't suit what I'm looking to propagate, which is independence. So in that way, I guess it's a solitary path.
What is the difference between shamans from the old world and I'm aware that we're talking thousands of years here. There's been, like with all things in consciousness and everything across the globe that we're experiencing, there's an evolution. So how do you perceive the pathway of evolution that has occurred for as far back as we can say written history, or even further, if you're able to comment on that?
Okay, well, my understanding, based on both personal perception and reading and feeling, is that in the past, a shaman, an uninitiated shaman, would have been observed by elders who were initiated, and they would be looking for particularly creative individuals, expressive individuals, which of course applies to me. And they would be then waiting for that individual to be woken up, rather than triggering an awakening themselves, as in waiting for a higher consciousness to wake the individual up, and then they could step forward and offer guidance as the existing shaman. So the point there is that the awakening or the remembering comes from an otherworldly trigger, not a three-dimensional, not a consciously set up three-dimensional trigger. Mm-hmm. Now, the challenge these days, of course, is we don't live in villages. We live in urban sprawls, rural areas, or compacted city centres where the community is quite different. And we don't have, generally, I would suggest in the Western world, we don't have elders who are looking over us from our kind of cradle to grave, but certainly from cradle to maturity. The whole nuclear family, and the fact that we move around, and certainly, but we do a lot in Australia. We move away from our families for work, or to go across country for different experience, or to go internationally. So we don't really exist in the modern Western world, from my point of view, in this village environment. So that when a shaman gets woken up, then they may need to put their hand up for help. They may need to go to a centre like yours, or many others of a similar vein, to say, help me, I don't understand what's happening to me. So there's the difference between old and new. And I was blessed, as I've said, in my experience, that my family were very understanding and supportive of what was happening to me. For someone else, that might be a more challenging situation.
Yes, well, I can certainly reflect on my own awakening experience there, and not having the family support certainly made that a much more challenging experience. And it's interesting to consider what it is that, and here we start to, I think, get into some of the nuts and bolts of crystal dreaming itself, and the pathway for enlightenment, about why it is that if we consider that things don't randomly happen to us, we're starting to talk about a new way of perceiving self and the world and creation and reality, that we're choosing our experience. And why is it then that, say, your experience was to choose to have that within a family unit that was very supportive, whereas, say, my choice to have the experience as a very solitary one, not even with the family support? Why is it that people or at a higher level souls choose to do these things?
Well, I think it's kind of, if you look at sleeping shaman as undercover operatives who are waiting to be woken up when the need arises, then the wake-up time may be, like my team might have been knocking on the door for 10 or 20 years, but I was so happy and fulfilled in my work as an artist. Well, I wasn't hearing them, I was expressing that in my art. So I think the reality of this situation is we're in the 21st century. We've incarnated in, or you and I have incarnated into modern Western culture, and that's the reality we're in. And that reality does not always support a shaman's awakening. Like I think our own higher selves and our spiritual teams will do their very best to set up the most supportive situation that they can, but it's nothing like it would have been thousands of years ago. So the simple choice is that we've gone, okay, I volunteer to incarnate on Earth at this time, and I volunteer at some point to become aware of my innate ability for the greater good. And let's just let that time happen at the best possible time, the most fortuitous time, the most powerful time, or the most opportune time. Do you see what I'm getting at? It's to do with our choice to be involved here and now. And on that theme, I actually think it's important for those of us who wake up not to recreate what we have been. Though for me, I don't see much point in trying to recreate my Druid form or my ancient Egyptian form, because that was relevant then. Now it's time. What I believe we need to do is create a relevant form for the 21st century. And that's an organic process, because there's no real template, is there?
Well,
There's no...
In life,
yeah, go on.
It's a bit like anything in life. It doesn't come with a book. There's do this, then do that. And this will happen. As you say.
Apart from crystal dreaming.
Apart from crystal dreaming, that's right. So, which bringing that back to crystal dreaming process, you said that within a year of having this awakening, you were then teaching facilitators of the process. So, how many years ago are we talking?
About 25 years since my awakening, and then 25 years in terms of offering one-on-one sessions, because they happened immediately, spontaneously. Yeah. And then 24 years of teaching.
So how did that then evolve? Let's talk about what's happened in those 24 years of crystal.
Lots and lots of challenging situations. Where I would open a client's consciousness to all that they are. In doing that, it reveals anything that doesn't love them unconditionally. And in order for a client to be fully empowered, then it's appropriate that all those experiences, beings, are gently and joyfully removed. And there was no handbook. So therefore, my team would be saying, you know what to do. And I would be saying, but I don't. What do I do? And the client would be, in the middle of having an intense experience. And really my team just sat back and said, trust what you know what to do. So that's the remembering. And so the process evolved, and is pretty well evolved now, I think, by hundreds, thousands of sessions. I worked and I facilitated over 6,000 personal sessions, which is quite a lot.
It is.
And they're all pretty, as you know, they're all pretty different. While there are patterns, I'm able to share the technique because there are common themes for all beings, but every session is quite unique beyond the X-Files. At some stage, certainly the first 5 years were pretty intense. But then things, but that was my initiation as well. That was my remembering. My conscious mind had to be shown that this wasn't some kind of fantasy world or some odd clients imagining things. There was such a common theme where clients would not know each other, not know the same reality. They couldn't possibly know that. And then it all then meshed together into a bigger picture of how realities are held together and how our consciousness affects them.
That's fascinating. And so you speak to the fact that there's a process that occurs and you're opening up people's consciousness, revealing all of the things that don't love them unconditionally and need to be removed. But,
the aim being to connect them with unconditional love, yes.
Yeah. So the point of this shamanic process and true shamanic process is about the reconnection to higher self, source, and unconditional love. And not only the idea of that, but the actual feeling and knowing of that. Is that?
Yes, the visceral experience of it, the deep knowing of it through a profound emotional, spiritual revelation. However, I am aware that there are other forms of shamanism that are very much about just opening the client, as in the seeker has come to me. This is not me speaking, I'm speaking on behalf of other shamanic processes. The seeker has come to me, therefore I will open them, full stop. And I will allow them to experience whatever they need to experience without any particular protection or guidance. So that's another form of shamanism that is not the form I practice. I prefer to create a safe space where I can assist the client in profound realization rather than an open space.
So at a higher level of truth, why is that you prefer that way?
Because I take responsibility for the opening that I'm facilitating. It's a big deal for me to allow isn't the word. It really to create a space where people can have a similar experience to mine. If they're coming to me in trust, then it's important for me that I do my very best to ensure that the process is safe is the best word. It's free of random influences, free of anything that's not with the client. And then the process is all very much initially about clearing the client of things that are preventing them from accessing their higher self. And then later the process is about navigating the multidimensional realities that are a breath away. They really are. And I think our culture, particularly modern Western culture, has totally lost touch with that. Our ancient selves, it was acknowledged. Our ancient selves knew that this was a universal truth, that this experience here and now is a small part of our consciousness. But our modern selves, they might, particularly these days, might read that They might read it in a magazine, or they might hear someone say it on TV or on the radio. But to experience it, to wholly experience it, is quite another story.
I'd like to offer some feedback for our listeners and viewers on the comment that Raym made to create an experience with crystal dreaming that is as close to what he went through himself, in that, and without going too much into my own story, because this is not about me, but just for that benefit, certainly through the awakening, the shamanic awakening that I went through in 1999, it wasn't until I came to crystal dreaming and had a crystal dreaming experience that I underwent a journey process that was as close to the actual experience that I went through myself. And so I'm now able to share that with students myself, to add the extra support of the truth of what's possible through crystal dreaming. So I feel like that's a really important thing for people to realize, is that we have an idea. There's been a lot of songs and all of that for decades, right? People are singing "We Are One" and about oneness and all of these things, and it's really nice, and everybody bops along to it, and we get into that flow and that groove. But there is nothing that can replace the actual experience of getting that out of the head and into the heart and the awareness of self. So I personally would like to thank you, Raym, for undergoing your initiation, and
I'd like to say it was my pleasure.
Chaos that I well understand ensues from such an experience, which is an interesting thing. You're speaking to the process being a lot gentler through the crystal dreaming awakening experience, so the difference is that, as in your case, like you said, you couldn't have gone through if it wasn't for the support of your family. I know I couldn't have gone through it if I hadn't had the unwavering faith and devotion to, and the love that I have for the divine by myself. I couldn't have gone through that by myself if that wasn't a billion, trillion, infinity % knowing in my soul and in my heart. So when people are listening to this and they're going, gosh, I'm not sure, do I even want to have this experience? What's going to happen to me, right? There's a really big difference I've noticed between what occurs when a person has an awakening experience through crystal dreaming than what, say, you have been through. So what's the difference? What happens in life that's then different
afterwards?
Yeah.
Well, a lot depends on the individual, but the most common realization is that the big challenges that people feel they're going through really aren't so big. That they get a cosmic perspective on the challenges that they're experiencing now. And there's also, for most, if eventually not all clients, a feeling of being home that they've never had before, a feeling of returning to oneness and unity consciousness that they may have read about, they may have sung about, they may have danced to, but to actually go there in a 1.5 hour process, not a 10-week process or a year-long process. Usually for most clients, we aim to get them there in 1.5 hour session. That going to that place changes everything, changes all their relationships, changes their outlook on life, And then it's a matter of, well, what do they do with this? For some, it naturally follows through. There's a profound change in direction in their life. For others, it's a letting go of old patterns and a realization that they do actually have control over how their life plays out, and an understanding of challenges and why they come. So it's many faceted. In the end, it comes down to personal empowerment. And personal responsibility, taking responsibility. You cannot, the blame game doesn't work anymore once you've had that experience. It can't, it's got not, it's because it's not true, because we can change things as we choose. And for a person who may have been feeling disempowered for a long time, that's profound. So how it plays out, it's, as you know, there are many, many clients. Everyone's personality is different. But my aim is that clients leave a crystal dreaming session feeling totally self-empowered and not reliant on anyone, definitely not reliant on me, but not needing any other human being. That they're not dependent on anyone, if that makes sense. So walking out of a session with that, knowing to your core, can change a lot of things. And sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's dramatic, sometimes it's a major awakening that leads to traveling the world and becoming a great healer yourself. Sometimes it comes down to how you interact with people at work and at home, because you're viewing everything differently from a much bigger perspective. It brings on a lot more compassion for other human beings. When you get outside of this reality and look at the many influencing factors that are affecting people, we're able to be a lot more compassionate. And of course, right now, we're in this state of flux that has been predicted for 25, 50 years. 25 years ago, I was reading about this imminent state of flux, and I was like, when's it going to happen? Well, obviously, we're right in the middle of it now. And crystal dreaming can help a lot with understanding an individual's place in that and what their best course of action is.
So it's a very interesting description, and the overall sense that I get from what you're saying is that it brings flow, and that there is a lot of grace in the process, and it brings a lot of grace into the experience of the life that the individual is living.
Yes, and it empowers the individuals to maybe make tough decisions.
Yes.
Decisions that seemed hard before then seem easy, because there's obviously a clear choice. You want joy or not joy? And you can make that choice. I want joy, yes. I want that for everyone.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Why crystals? Why crystals?
Why crystals? Well, they are powerful interdimensional tools. And that's something modern Western culture doesn't really get. You go to other older cultures and they get it. So crystals, when laid in a particular pattern, and as you know, with crystal dreaming, we have a pattern, a mandala of crystal that extends a meter or more around the body. Crystals, when laid in a particular pattern, can trigger particular openings. And, I think there are 1,000,001 patterns that will trigger 1,000,001 things. But crystal dreaming is very, very specific in the way that the crystals are laid, with the intention of opening the client to higher consciousness. So why crystals? They are let's say, a natural tool that's available. And they work very well.
They certainly do. And why dreaming? Where does that bit come from?
Well, the process is like a dream, but it's not. And it's also my humble way of honoring the indigenous culture. Not that I'm saying it's dream time, but we're in Australia. And yes, the process, we're moving into another reality, an expanded reality, which is bigger than dreaming. But crystal dreaming really I don't know, right from the beginning, to me, it captured something of, rather than describing the modality as multidimensional opening. Do you see what I mean? It's too big a title. It's a nice, easy way of maybe introducing people to the concept that there is an expanded consciousness connected with crystals.
Fantastic. And you've been writing stories about crystal dreaming experiences for some time, haven't you?
Yeah, there are 66 stories altogether, which are in my book, which I'm happy to give away to your viewer or listener. We'll work that out later. But I'm slowly releasing those stories every 2 weeks on diaryofanurbanshaman.com. So people can visit diaryofanurbanshaman.com, and they'll see there's already, I don't know, 4, 5 or 6 stories, and every 2 weeks they're updated, and they can subscribe to that, or they can just visit it. It's free. So my aim in releasing the stories is to share the potential of crystal dreaming. And there are that many stories, it will take over 2 years to release them all.
Amazing. Now, and why? Now, hang on. Why is this so important? You know, we're talking about this time of flux, and that's been foretold for some time coming. Well, what's going on? Why are you doing this gig?
Well, in my small way, my aim, or I guess one client at this time, or now there are many crystal dreaming, over 600 crystal dreaming practitioners worldwide. Each of those, following on from my intention, is to open individuals to the realization of their infinite power, their infinite connection with everything. It's like deep ecology. You realize that you're connected with absolutely everything. Things you can see, things you can't see, things in the material world, things that aren't in the material world. So if I can contribute to lifting humanity's consciousness one at a time, then that's a great thing. And that's what it's all about. The process is a one-on-one process. I've looked at turning it into a group process, but it's so individuated. It's such an individual thing, and it's such an at times intense process. The best way to experience it is one-on-one. I can do a kind of a taste as a group, but really the profound work happens one-on-one. And that profound work, as I say, is my aim is to contribute to an awakening of humanity.
So that sounds perfect, being that it is a shamanic journey and a shamanic path, that it would be an individuated process.
That's right. Yeah.
So the other thing on that is that why do we need, or what's the drive, or what's going on in the background that has pulled you to help humanity to awaken? Why do we need to awaken?
Why do we need to awaken? Because there is a potential for humanity to live in peace. There is a potential for humanity to live in a pollution-free environment, in a very abundant environment. But to do that, we have to take control as individuals. We have to wake up to the fact that we can do this, rather than accept that it's inevitable that we must experience things that we don't enjoy. I don't believe it is. I think once enough people are awake, then massive change can happen. And we're seeing it now with young people. And it's wonderful to see. And so there are many, I'm making my small contribution to this. There are many other contributors that are helping humanity realize, hang on, we can live in a peaceful, abundant, joy-filled reality.
So what's really interesting about this concept that you're speaking to, and what I have witnessed in people's lives, my own, through the shamanic awakening process and through the shamanic awakening crystal dreaming process, is that in one's mind, as you speak to, there's this, it seems to be like a matrix style program running, that inevitable the fate of the planet. It's inevitable, the fate of humanity. It's inevitable, the fate of the species and the health of the situation. But I have seen, and it seems from that limited perspective, it seems an insurmountable thing. But what I've seen is people go from being diseased, totally trapped in their lives or situations within their lives, to being totally transformed, free of disease, and liberated from those blockages in their life through one session or through that awakening process. So when we start to think of this rather than individual and in a space of many individuals waking up, how rapid do you perceive the shift on a planetary scale can be?
Well, I wish it was more rapid. It could be instantaneous. That would be great. I've been wishing it would be more rapid for about 25 years now. But my belief is it can happen in a moment.
Yeah.
It just needs enough people to be in that state. So it's kind of like, how long is a piece of string? How many modalities, how many methods, how many triggers for awakening, for empowerment does humanity need? Mine is one of many. So I would say it could happen in an instant if enough people grasp, if enough people have the experience. It's about the experience. It's not an intellectual thing. I think there are many people, and I've certainly had clients who are well-read ministers of religion come to me looking for the experience, the actual experience of what they've read about for their whole lives and what they've propagated in their belief system. But once a person's had their own personal experience, everything changes. And I'm saying there are many roads leading to Rome at the moment. There are many ways that this is happening. Mine is one of them. So yeah.
So you in your journey, you've refined the modality, the process to what is, in my experience, a bulletproof process. To perhaps not the best choice of phrase to describe that. a seamless,
yes,
a seamless, safe, and trustworthy, integrity-filled process. The process has integrity. That's how I'd like to rephrase that. And to say that, you've said there's about 600 practitioners who facilitate worldwide. How is it, aside from seeing you, how do people actually get a hold of a practitioner, or how do they access the courses that are run? Because it's not just you that teaches them, is it?
No, there are about a dozen teachers worldwide. The easiest thing is to go to crystaldreaming.com, nice and simple and easy to remember, or look out wherever you live in your healing spaces, in your alternative spaces, for someone who is a certified crystal dreaming practitioner. And there's lots of information on that key website, crystaldreaming.com. So that's the first step for someone, but not all the practitioners are listed there. So there's a note at the bottom of the list of practitioners saying, look around your local area, or email me from that website through the little portal there, and I will do my best to connect you with someone I know in the area.
Fantastic. So you live in Australia, you've mentioned that. Are there teachers in every major city in Australia?
Most cities. There would be the Eastern Seaboard, Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Perth. There are practitioners in Adelaide, but not a teacher at the moment. We don't have a teacher in Darwin. We don't have a teacher in Alice. We outside of Australia, there are practitioners in London, different parts of the UK, and quite a few across the States, like 50 or 60 practitioners in the States, spread out kind of from New York State going outwards. We've got a very active teacher in New York.
Active teacher in New York, fantastic. So there's lots of places that people can access that, or if they're on their journeys around the globe, they can hook into a course, make it part of the trip.
Because there are courses running in Europe and America and potentially India and a few other places. There is, of course, if they can't, my personal recommendation every time is to have a crystal dreaming experience, a shamanic experience. But there are quite a few practitioners who have the advanced technique where they can act as an intermediary for the client. That's very useful if you can't get to have a personal experience, but my recommendation is have a shamanic journey with a certified crystal dreaming practitioner.
Fantastic. And is there anything else that you'd like to share about crystal dreaming to our listeners?
Well, I'm a little bit biased, but I think it's fantastic. I think it's a great way of anyone without preconceptions, that you don't have to be well researched, well read, a spiritual apprentice. Anyone can walk into a crystal dreaming session with a clear intention of, I'm ready to access my power. I'm ready to be of service to humanity. I'm ready to remember why I was born, why I'm here now, and how I can contribute to humanity's evolution. Anyone can do that. And that's actually why I still offer personal sessions after all this time, because yes, every session's different, but the level of empowerment one session the profound effect one session can have on a person still amazes me even after all this time. So I'm biased, but I think it's a very is the right word, erudite. It's a very efficient process that anyone from any culture, from any cultural background, regardless of what they believe, providing they don't resist the process, there's a 98% chance they're going to have a profound experience.
I'd like to second all of what Raym's just said. I'd like to totally 100 billion infinite % support what he says, because, and I'd also like to point out that he's given you listeners out there a really, really, really big hint about what it would be good to set your intention for session. That's important, you know. So I'd like to offer that to everyone, and I'd like to say thank you so much to you, Raym, for sharing your personal story, for sharing your soul's gift to humanity, for your fantastic contribution to humanity in that way, and for lighting up consciousness through this fabulous technique. And also thank you for empowering me as one of your teachers. The crystal dreaming process has personally transformed my life on several occasions, always for the better. And I would like to also just say to people out there, you know, if your heart and soul is yearning for something, if you have the inkling that you're here for something and you don't know what it is, this is one of the most efficient ways that you can access that, and to jump straight onto Google and start searching for your pathway to illumination and empowerment now.
Yes, go along with that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Raym.